might seem a bit confrontational. I don't see it that way. I'm just really passionate about what I do. And look, not everyone gets an opportunity to go up on stage with some famous DJ and there you go, you've made it. Deadmau5 mentioned this as well. He's really had to work to establish himself. He didn't get that special backpack and then there you go. Not everyone gets that opportunity. And I guess it's a curse and a blessing at the same time. But we all have to trust our own process. And with that, you develop your own perspective and your own way of viewing things. And you come to a point where you look at creating the art that you want to create. Start focusing on yourself and the way you want to do things and allowing everyone else to do the way they want. Right? So as I mentioned, this isn't sort of like my way is the best and your way is, this. Nothing like that. It's just, this is my perspective. This is how I view things. I come from that background where you are wanting to respect the audience. It's not just about you. Looking outside of yourself. With too much in here, it's too much about how we're feeling, how that I'm this, I'm that, You need to look out and realize that, without your audience, without people like you guys, without the community here that's supporting, watching this, I wouldn't be able to do this, right? I might not feel 100% every day. I rarely do 100%, but you just keep going forward and you do what you can that day. Do what you are able to do for that day. Sometimes it's a lot more productive. Sometimes it's not. And you've seen some of these videos that I just wasn't up for it, but you do it anyway. And some of them are a lot more high energy, some of them are a bit but that's just the way it is. And you just have to respect the fact that what I'm able to do, not many people are able to do that. And you just have to respect that. And that's one thing I love about Prince and why he's such a huge inspiration. He said that I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that this is my life, that I can become the best that I can become at this and make sure that I am able to do this. And he knew the challenges and the tribulations and everything he had to go through to be able to do that. But at the end of the day, it just shows you, even though he was so talented, he could do all that, you could still see that, without the work ethic, he wouldn't have been able to do any of that. You can just sit around and be like, I am talented. I can play all this and you should just listen to me. He still put in the work, you had something to say. And that's key. And I think that the core there is, he respected his audience. And he knew that without them, he wouldn't be able to do what he does. I think that's very, very important. And you need to change the perspective. Realize that you aren't necessarily doing it for yourself. And yes, music is a very personal thing. But you are looking at, you're sharing your feelings, etc. When you put it out into the world, you are in some ways, collective. You're part of something bigger than yourself. And sometimes you might just not feel like it, and sometimes you might this, sometimes but you have to realize it's not just about you. And if you want to do like a big show, you want to do like your own sort of event and etc., then you gotta deliver and you gotta make sure that you're respecting the people that come in to see you. Some people might drive hours to see you, might travel across the country, be from a completely different continent just to come and see you. And for you to just be like, play an hour and a half or whatever, that's not for me. So you gotta go out there and deliver yoga show stuff. Anyway, besides that bit of rant off and just best practices again, just professionalism and some things to sort of think about when you are wanting to get into music and be a professional in music. Other professions, being at top of your game. Looking back at this breakdown, setting up cue points, setting up your live cue points, looking at giving yourself time, giving yourself space in between those cue points is very important. You notice sometimes you might have an error, or sometimes you might forget to move something, like move a fader up, or you might just forget something to do with the mix or change the tempo. These things happen. You're human, it's a live mix. You don't want to be too hard on yourself. The key, especially in something like this, when we're just doing a free form, it's being very little sort of, practice behind it. You're just, you're trying to be like very authentic in the mix. You just have to be okay with these things, right? These things take time to really hone and practice. And very few people can, just bring in some tracks and make very minor mistakes or areas really be complex in the way they're mixing and transitioning and stuff like that. Just be okay with that. I think MJ missed like thousands of shots, but compared to how many he made, but no one looks at the amount of shots that he missed. So the same thing here. Be smart about it and allow yourself some breathing room. in your cue points, at least a bar or so, just so you can bring it in more musically. Just some best practices, setting up, just, the choruses, some key breakdown moments, a vocal, point, or some cool sample that's in the song. That's standard stuff to look at when you are setting up your cue points. Yeah, and the one thing I would say is, to be quite sort of open to changing your cue points in the songs. Don't be super rigid in that's it. Always be willing to add in new cue points as you're going through the mix. Be very fluid. And then when you're even playing a cue point, just search through and listen to the other ones, and see which one might work better. And sometimes that song in general might just not work for that moment anymore, and you find a different song. Just one thing, when you are approaching sort of live edits, timing is key, right? You want to do it musically and work with it musically. You can create those sort of very sort of present, sort of secondary beats, and you're adding in those effects and everything, and stop the groove quickly and then bring it in. But the key is just really doing it musically. Yeah, we touched on quickly for the manual adjustments of the tempo, sometimes allowing the song to naturally finish and then extending that out, for me, is more musical. And you can really, you can detune the song like that. Going from 130 to 125, you can do it quicker. At the ending of the song is less noticeable, and you can add some effects in and really extend it out a little bit longer. You can create a nice little cool sort of detune effect in the end. That's one approach. You can do it as the song's playing, and slowly decrease it. You can even try it without the master tempo on, and then do it that way. You're freestyle. You're playing the game, but you don't have any of the maps or anything. You're doing it in this sort of hardcore mode. That's one approach to also try out. Listen with the ears. Can you tell when it's starting to sort of change the pitch? And finally, always be looking from the perspective of using your emotional intelligence, right? And feeling the vibe. We naturally can feel that when you go into a space or go into a club. You can feel if the energy is there, or if the energy just goes out. It's someone's like, the energy's high, and then someone says something that gives tells a really depressing story, then the whole energy just we can feel that. We're very emotional creatures. That's what you want when you are mixing, you are DJing. So you can feel the energy, you can feel the crowd, and if you are playing a super popular song, make sure you're doing at least three, at least like a rule of three. Three big ones before you decide to go into some, I don't know, hip hop, funk song from the 80s or something like that, or change it up and go into an 80s inspired sort of dance song or something like that. It just creates a bit of continuity. It creates it maintains that energy, right? And allows the audience to maintain the energy, a bit of a high, just for a little bit before you change things up. We talked about being careful when you are mixing fast, straight out the gate, going 1, 2, 3, so, and then people just going to something like that later in the mix, then when you've really got people, but you want to make sure that people are grooving with you. If you're struggling to even get the audience to go with you, mixing fast and stuff like this, I personally think that it will disconnect you from the audience even more. But again, take everything with a grain of salt. Live situations, every audience is different. Everything can be interpreted completely different. So just take everything I say, but take it with a grain of salt, and take it with your experience and your own interpretation, and see what works. Maybe I'm completely wrong about it and it might work for you. Awesome. Again, I'm just sharing with you some of my experiences, some of the things I've interpreted, and then have showing me how I don't want to present them. And I think that's key. You look at things that bother you and really think about why they bother you, and from there you can create your own unique style and interpretation of how you want to present your mix. I think that's sort of the biggest takeaway from here. Look at the things that bother you in a mix and things that you don't like, and then make sure you don't do those, or make sure you do them better in the way you mix. And that way you can create your own style, and that way you're contributing much more to the scene than just you being angry about it. because that does nothing. Being proactive about it and creating your own thing, do so much more. Awesome. Thank you so much. If you are one of those that have watched this full episode, stuck with me through the whole thing, including some of my left field trajectory points, not left, but yeah, it's just an expression, completely sort of off tangent things in my rants. Thank you so much for sticking around. I don't know why my nose is. I might even do the next one back to back. Yeah, I am feeling good about talking today. I'll see you.